have them saved, and we NDOT post them on their website to allow folks that maybe weren't able to make the meeting to have access to the same information. So I wanted to make that announcement as we get started. I've set the recording now. So my name is Amy Birch. I'm a traffic engineer and consultant working on behalf of NDOT to help facilitate this traffic calming program for the city of Nashville. And also on the call, we have Ellie Finn. She's an engineer and with Kimley Horn, a consultant also working on this project. So or this program, I should say. So she'll be helping me monitor the chat box and helping answer questions as we go along. So again, thanks for coming to the virtual meeting about traffic calming on Wallace Road. And let's get started. So first off, let's talk about what traffic calming is. We really talk about traffic calming in terms of residential streets. And focusing on adding physical measures to the street to encourage lower speeds over longer distances of the street. We're focused on speed reduction primarily, and these are only applicable on residential streets for this type of treatment. In traffic calming, we often talk about the 3 E's of traffic calming. So that's education, spreading information throughout the community and your neighborhood about the traffic calming project, but reasons why we want drivers to slow down, which is primarily safety. And then enforcement, that is what the police department helps do with enforcing the regulations on the street. And then engineering, and that's really what this program focuses on, is the how do we modify and change the street to change driver behaviors and slow people down as they drive on residential streets. So I mentioned safety. That's really a big focus of this program. And this diagram here shows the relationship between pedestrian survivability and the speed at which a car is going when a pedestrian is struck by a vehicle. So as you can see, at 25 miles per hour, a pedestrian has a 89% chance of survival if being struck by a vehicle. And then that survivability percentage goes way down to 35% as the vehicle's driving 45 miles per hour. So we're really trying to, with this program, is slow traffic down through neighborhood streets, because we want to avoid these types of crashes. This is a very popular program within NDOT, and this map on the right shows all the streets that have requested traffic calming. Those are the pink lines you see on the map. And as of our last round of traffic calming applications, we had 464 neighborhood streets that had requested traffic calming. That's quite a lot of streets in Davidson County that are asking for slower speeds on their residential streets. So in this last round, when Wallace was selected, we were able to select 26 neighborhood streets for traffic calming out of those 464 that were that have been requesting it. And overall, throughout the year, the NDOT program selects about 50 streets a year. And so we do them in 2 batches of about 25. This round was 26, but that's how it's done, and that's based on the funding that's allocated towards the program and how the process of the program works. So how do we go from those over 400 streets that are asking for traffic calming to our selection? It's a data-driven prioritization process that we use, and it's based on a 100-point scale. And we look at these 5 criteria to rank each street that's requested traffic calming. So every street that asks for traffic calming gets a score, and then the streets at the top that score the highest are the ones that we've identified as being good candidates for traffic calming, but also in need of traffic calming. So the main criteria that we look at that gets 45% of the score is the speed. We go out and we measure the speed on the street, and we compare the prevailing speed to 25 miles per hour, which is generally, in most cases, the posted speed limit on these residential streets. And we look at the 85th percentile speed compared to that 25 miles per hour. Then we also have a volume criteria that we look at, and that's the total daily volume of traffic on the streets. So that's both directions that we're measuring when we do that data collection. And then we also look at trip destinations. So are there places where we would expect pedestrians to be walking to and from the neighborhood street or neighborhood? So those are things like schools, libraries, parks, and community centers, those type of facilities. And that gets 5% of the score. Then we also look at non-driver accommodations. So that is whether or not there's sidewalks on the street, the presence of bikeways on the street, and greenways nearby, and bus routes and bus stops near the street. And we also, and that's 15% of the score. And then 10% of the score is the vulnerable user injury fatality criteria. And that is, we look back at 10 years of crash data and identify whether or not there's been a pedestrian injury or fatality on the street. And if so, that gets 10 points. So that's our prioritization process, and we go through this, and we do this data analysis every round when we select a batch of projects for traffic calming. So Wallace scored in that top number. Hi, council member. Thanks for joining. Just saw you pop in. We've gotten started, and we'll carry on. But if you want to make comments, please do.
Yeah, sorry I'm late, everyone. I'm just very much under the weather.
Well, we're glad you're here. So I just went over the prioritization process and how we got to selection of Wallace, and just want to give some data points about Wallace Road and what part of the street we're looking at. We're talking about Wallace Road between Willard Drive and Humber Drive. And this street is categorized as a collector avenue. That means it's kind of a like mid-level street. It's still a residential street. It's primarily residential land uses on this street. But it's a street that kind of connects the smaller residential streets to the larger streets like Harding and Nolensville. So when we did our data collection and measured the 85th percentile speed on Wallace Drive, or Wallace Road, excuse me, we measured it at 34 miles per hour where the speed limit is 25 miles per hour. So the 85th percentile speed is a measurement we typically use, and what it means is 85% of the traffic that we measured was going 34 miles per hour or below. So what that also means is that 15% of the traffic was measured going above 34 miles per hour. But that 85th percentile speed is a typical measurement that we traffic engineers look at, and when we're doing speed studies and such. So then the volume was measured at about 4,500 vehicles per day. Again, that's both directions. So that's sort of at the top of our thresholds for streets that are appropriate for traffic calming. Streets that have higher volumes don't really qualify for traffic calming, but this is still within our range. The street width, the street has, two-way flow. It's got centerline striping. It's about 22 feet wide. So we don't have any, extra shoulders on the side or wide lanes by any means, because they're about 11-foot lanes, which is pretty standard. There is sidewalk, luckily on one side of the street, on the north side along this length of Wallace. This map just depicts our project limits between Humber and Willard Drive over to the on the east side. Now we're going to talk about our toolkit and what we do with this program for traffic calming to encourage those slower speeds. Our number one tool that we use because it's so effective and people really like it, like them, are the speed cushions. If you live on Wallace, are probably pretty familiar with the speed cushions because they've been deployed on several streets in the Haywood Heights neighborhood on the south side of Wallace. And so these devices are rubberized. We can form them in different configurations based on the width of the street and the characteristics of the street. But as these pictures show, they can be in sets of 2, like 1 in each lane, or sets of 3 when we have a wider street. And so we cover more width there on the street when we install them in 3s. We like these for one reason, because they have a reduced impact to emergency vehicle responses, and that's because they do have the gaps, so that those emergency vehicles that have wider wheelbases than passenger cars are able to more easily straddle the devices and have less impact as they're trying to reach their destination. But passenger vehicles still need to travel over them directly and can't totally straddle them. They have markings, like white markings like you see on these pictures, or center line striping in cases where we install them on the center line, and those give more visibility as you approach the devices. We also pair them with warning signage as shown in the picture on the top left. It says speed cushions and advisory speed plaque on there. That profile view on the bottom left of your screen is showing you that particular one is 10.5 feet long. It's kind of our mid-length that we use, but it shows you kind of how high they are off the asphalt. But they're 3 inches high at their highest, and they slope up and then down on the other side. Then the picture on the bottom right shows a street that actually had a kind of a shoulder there. And so to keep vehicles from trying to drive around them, we've used these white delineator posts to keep people from going around them. We do that when they're paired with bike lanes as well. So when we install these, we typically do them in a series. So anywhere between 300 to 600 feet apart, just depending on characteristics of the street, vertical curvature and things like that. But that way we can achieve more of a consistent speed along the length of the street. So if we just place one device, drivers may choose to speed on either side, but if they're consistently placed, we can maintain a more appropriate residential speed. The next device that we use are speed tables. And these are made of similar product. They're rubberized, similar to, or exactly the same material as the speed cushions, but they're formed in a different way. As you can see, they don't have the gaps that emergency response vehicles that allows emergency vehicles to straddle over. They are typically longer. These pictures are of 14-foot long devices, but again, they have the markings. They're paired with signage and so forth, and they're still effective in slowing drivers down. But these are a little bit allow a little bit faster speed than the typical speed cushions. So NDOT has done a fair amount of before-after study of these vertical devices to determine how they're working here in our community in Nashville. And as of recently, there's been before-after study of 6 streets where the speed cushions have been installed. They're specifically the 6 by 7 foot speed cushions, but what these graphs are showing is the before average speed of those 6 streets was 31 miles per hour, and then the after was 22 miles per hour. And then the 85th percentile speed that we talked about earlier, that before measurement was 37 miles per hour. And then after the speed cushions were installed, went down to 25 miles per hour. So we're seeing a lot of great success with these devices. They're doing what we're trying to achieve, which is to bring the speed down to around 25 miles per hour. On other devices and tools that we use are radar feedback signs. These are message signs that are typically placed like you see here with the posted speed limit, and they show the driver their speed as they approach. Also, NDOT has done some before after studies with these, and they're showing average speed reduction of 6 miles per hour throughout Metro. So we use these in a lot of cases on maybe higher volume streets that aren't appropriate for vertical devices, or places where we have too much grade that we can't install vertical devices. So that's when we see those used more. Also, in our toolbox is some narrowing using pavement markings, white edge lines typically to just narrow the travel width. We also have traffic circles where these are like island devices installed in the middle of an intersection where traffic is generally travels around it like a roundabout, counterclockwise. And that horizontal deflection that the island places at the intersection slows traffic down as they navigate through the intersection. Bulb outs and chicanes using paint and flexible delineators are other tools that we use at intersections, at wide intersections, particularly for that picture on the left, just to narrow crossing distances and tighten the intersection to encourage drivers to slow down. And then the pictures on the right are a picture of chicanes where the road was pretty wide and straight, and in order to get drivers to slow down, NDOT has alternated the side of the street that the parking is on so that it creates some curvature in the street. That is not always an appropriate tool for some streets, but so you have to have the right conditions and such. But I think Fairfax Avenue is one of these streets where it's been done years and years ago. The parking goes back and forth from side to side. Okay, outside of this neighborhood street traffic calming program, I just want to point out some resources to you in case you're not familiar with the Hub Nashville, which is where you can report all sorts of issues that may need attention by Metro. And it's not just NDOT, but also other Metro departments like water services and so forth. But you can reach that by calling 311, and there's also an app, an online interface as well that you can use. And this is, street lights out, or signs been knocked down, or there's brush that needs to be cut back. That's a great resource, and it gets the information and the need to the right department. So always want to point people to the hub. You also get a number so that you can track the status of your request. Also, Walking Bike Nashville, Anna Dearman is the walking and biking manager, and I'm just providing her contact information if you have questions about sidewalks or bikeways. And then beautification is JD Lane. He's the commission coordinator, and that's things like Adopt a Street and community service and neighborhood cleanups. He's a resource to schedule those. All right, so without further ado, showing our concept because we've done some initial looking at your street and wanted to come to you with our ideas on what we might, what we would propose on Wallace between these two streets. And so just to orient you first, north is pointed up and Humber is over here on the left and Willard is over here on the right. And our legend is there at the bottom, but basically what we're talking about are 3 sets of speed cushions. And then over here on the hill where the grade is pretty steep on the section between roughly Turley and down towards Hillbrook, those symbols represent the radar feedback signs. So again, these are devices that are very similar to what's been recently installed in the Haywood Heights neighborhood. So I expect many of you are familiar with that. The length of cushions based on the speed and the volume on Wallace Road that we've measured, we would recommend the 14-foot cushion lengths, which I believe is like what's been installed on Willard. And so that gives us some spacing. I'm also showing where the all-way stops are located at Humber and Turley. So those kind of play together with where we place these devices. And we have limitations I've kind of alluded to about where we can put these vertical devices. We can't put them on steep grade. And so that's why we've selected the radar feedback signs for installation between Sherman Oaks and Hillbrook. So I think I'll pause there and see if anyone has any questions about this proposal. You can unmute and speak, or you can put them in the chat and we'll address them that way. Anyone have any thoughts on the speed cushions?
Yeah, I think that sort of thing would be effective in that is about a 400-foot, 600-foot stretch of Wallace Road. I think that would be effective. I live about 800 feet further down towards Nolensville Pike, directly across from Southern Hills Hospital. And my initial thought is that these modifications, these enhancements, which will be effective, I think, are just before you top the hill coming down towards Nolensville Pike. And I'll cross that crosswalk, which is clearly marked, even a turn lane for the EMT people going to the hospital. But drivers just seem to be hell-bent on going very fast to the stoplight at Nolensville Pike. What I'd like to see, and that's literally at that crosswalk, is enhanced signage saying it's pedestrian crossing. That may be out of your all's contract to handle that or not, but that's something that literally has my attention, to be sure.
That's good. That's good feedback, Mr. Bull. You're right. It is outside of what this program specifically does for traffic calming. But if you want to, you could put that sort of request into the hub, and that would get to the right people. But we'll also share it back.
I appreciate you sharing that. The other thing, and some more feedback, which quite frankly is really pertinent to me, is at the intersection of Nolensville Pike and Wallace Road. I think it's Edmondson on the other side. You've got, after someone was killed at that intersection, at the crosswalk, they put in the crosswalks and the signage, and that's about as good as you can do, except for a very pertinent detail. if a car is coming off Edmondson onto Nolensville Road, which is at that intersection with Wallace, all you've got is the pedestrian signal saying, okay, it's white, and then it gives you a countdown. Where I'm going specifically with this, twice since March, I've been hit by cars, pickup trucks to be precise, that were in that turn lane, crossing that crossway between Walgreens and Southern Hills Hospital.
I'm sorry.
Well, hey, I'm a tough old goat, but it's that gets my attention. The signage for people coming off Edmondson, it says stay in the left lane. And that's all the signage says. Turning vehicles, in the right lane to turn onto Nolensville. Where I'm going with this is perhaps there should be some signage saying, look out for the pedestrians crossing the crosswalk. I think I've been doing all the right things. I turn on my a blinker on my armband so people see the white, that's actually a person crossing that crosswalk, although it's well lit, and it was very clear, that this is where pedestrians cross in the crosswalk. Maybe some signage like they do on Rosa Parks Boulevard saying state law, look out for pedestrians when they're in the crosswalk. Something like that might be effective.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you get hit twice by vehicles that just don't care if you're crossing or not, they don't have the attention. It's a personal problem for me at that crosswalk. It really is.
I'll share
I'd like you to do, I'd like you personally and Ellie to contact Hub or whoever in the mayor's office is in charge of signage like they have on Rosa Park Boulevard at the 500 or 750 or 7500 block, stating that you need to look out for the pedestrians crossing the road.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Information and feedback. We'll share that, and if you want to put it in the hub as well,
Oh yeah.
great.
Yeah.
So I'm going to answer some of these questions. Oh, you have something else?
That pretty well handles it. Well handles it.
Good. So you're no issues or regarding this plan here about speed cushions and the radar feedback signs.
Oh, and again, I'll reiterate, for that 400-foot stretch of Wallace Road, I think it'll be very effective, what you're proposing. But my concern is people across the hill, there's no more of those pads saying slow down. And as they've been doing, they'll just fly down to that intersection at Nolensville Pike and Wallace, and there you are.
Yep.
Oh yeah, there is one more thing.
Okay.
I'll put it in comments. There was an article in the New York Times about the Zero Vision program. As you probably know, y'all are both into traffic engineering. They were one of the very first people in the States to start the Zero Vision program. And the article is pretty plain. It's entitled, when a walkable city becomes a death trap. It's worth checking out. Their point is New York City has done an impressive amount of work doing zero vision and what y'all are proposing. But the numbers of people dying on the street, there's been no change whatsoever. I just put that the title of that article in the
thank you.
Yeah, well, I'm sure the mayoral candidates.
Nashville also has a Vision Zero action plan and implementation plan, and are working towards trying to achieve that goal as well, and really focused on pedestrian safety. So this program, I believe, is partially sort of part of the Vision Zero, because we're trying to prevent unsafe crashes. So yeah, we as Nashville, NDOT is very in tune with trying to improve safety, and council's been, also funding the action plan. So we look forward to moving forward. But all right, I'm going to go back and now and answer some of these questions, and I'll start at the top. And the question is, Councilmember, you want to say something?
Yeah, I have a question. So
Yes.
some of for the Haywood Heights, streets like the ones right by Haywood Elementary, they have those white poles that are right next to the cushions. And
Mm-hmm.
then some on the other side on Faulkner don't. And then on Willard, we we mainly have the speed cushion sign, but they're not necessarily right next to the speed cushion. So a problem that we're seeing is that some cars try to avoid the speed cushions and go into the neighbor's yard and kind of tear up the yard a little bit. So some of
Mm-hmm.
the neighbors have started putting, wood logs so they don't do that. My question is, for the parts of the road, the stretches of the road that don't have sidewalks, where that can be an issue,
Mm-hmm.
could we put the speed cushion sign right next to the speed cushion itself, or maybe the white poles to try and prevent that from happening?
That's a great point, and thanks for sharing that feedback. And we have started doing more of that to try to avoid in our design, to try to avoid people trying to go around them by placing the sign there or using the white delineator posts. So we will look at that as we get more into our more detailed plan. Yes, but all of our speed cushions will have signage with them, and so we will strategically place them
Thank
to
you.
try to mitigate that. So thanks for that point. So the first question we had was, would these speed cushions be with or without the gaps? And so this proposal is for with the gaps. So it's speed cushions, not the table that goes the full width of the street. And the as you can see in this picture, we've placed that sign right next to the cushion to try to avoid that, the going around. And based on the width of the street and the lanes, we would put them similar to this picture where it's one cushion in each lane, like that. So that's that question. So there's a question about whether or not there's a chance for a crosswalk at the intersection of Humber and Wallace, or is that not part of traffic calming? So we don't really get into the crosswalk locations and installation through this program, but that's a great request you could put into the hub 311, or use the app or online. You can access it from Nashville.gov. So I'd encourage you to do that. Let's see, from Mary Marks, my mic doesn't work on the computer, but could you do the signs on the south side of the street? Also, can I see cushionings on Wallace? I live near Tampa. Am I reading that right? Signs. Okay. Yes, so we would be putting signs with the speed cushions so that people can see them. Yes, absolutely. That they have that warning of the speed cushions. And I think that's probably in sort of in reference to what Councilmember was saying about placing the signs next to the cushions so people don't drive around them. So we will take that into consideration and do that. There's a comment about we also have semi trucks on the street as well occasionally. Yes, those these devices, we also, when we're looking at streets that are appropriate for traffic calming, we do take into consideration and take a look at what the heavy vehicles or volume is or percentage is, and so that we're not placing them in places where, or on streets where there's so much heavy vehicle volume that they would be torn up really quickly. So we believe that Wallace is a candidate, and that's not going to be too much of a problem. But right, all streets, occasionally have delivery vehicles, heavy vehicles, traveling down them. But these are rated for a certain volume of traffic, so I think we should be okay there. Let's see, and then we have the comments from Mr. Bull about the article on Vision Zero. So thank you. Yes. Joette?
Yes, I live between Hillbrook and Turley.
On the
And I
hill.
see if there's not going to be, and I'm fine with that, I'm not sure that cushions are gonna, I know it's gonna slow down some people, but my concern is from Hillbrook, once they come out of that curve, I sit and watch it every day. They come out of the curve going up the hill, and that's when they gun it. And they gun it all the way through the stop sign. So I'm just wondering if a roundabout somewhere in there would not help. Around her, of course, I know that's probably not possible because you've got yards and everything there. But they're not going to slow. They're not going to stop that. I mean, they're going to continue to come out of that curve and speed up and go as fast as they can. And I had a young man, two young men last July, a 21-year-old and a 16-year-old that wrecked in my yard doing that very thing, coming out of the curve. They just didn't make the curve. So they come into my yard and the 16-year-old died in my yard. So I don't know how we can stop that kind of activity. I mean, I know you can't have police presence. I mean, that would be the best thing in the world. It's that let them get tickets one after the other. I know that's not possible too.
Right, they have obviously lots going on, but
yeah.
and can't be there all the time. That is why we like our traffic calming devices, because they're 24/7. They're there all the time. But I understand and hear your concern about that section. We do have limited things we can do because of that grade and curvature, but hopefully with the radar feedback sign, we'll let people know that they are speeding and going too fast. And regarding the crosswalk at Turley, I'll share that information. You can also put that in the hub as well to request improved signage or something there. And yeah, I don't see it possible to construct a roundabout. I think you said that as well, just limited right of way and so forth. But
I mean, we have a lot of ambulance and fire trucks go down through here constantly also. And I know you said that, they could get over them. Obviously, they're not going to be over them as fast. And we've got, this is a bus route. You've got city buses that go through here all the time.
Yes, that's right. And that's another reason why we like to do the two, in one in each lane, like a pair like that on this street, because that's what MTA prefers, so that they don't need to cross over the center line or anything.
Okay, so are they going to have to veer into the oncoming traffic to miss it, or will they be?
No, they will just go over them. They will, the MTA buses will drive straight over them, just like a passenger car.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing further on this proposal, I'll go into next steps. We can come back to this if there's any other questions. There's like a all right, so we just want to show what our kind of the flow of our program, how it works. All streets that we're working in for traffic calming, they've started with an application. So residents have filled out an application and requested traffic calming. And like I said earlier, we select in 2 rounds per year. So there's also 2 application cycles per year. The most recent application window, it was open in the month of March, so it closed at the end of March, and so now we're in the process of doing our data collection and prioritization for that round that will come later on in the year. So we take the applications and we do all our data collection for every street that's requested traffic calming, and run that prioritization and selection and select the top 25 streets that qualify for traffic calming and have the greatest need based on that calculation. Then we do our meeting 1. So that's where we are right now, is meeting with you all and telling you about the program, our concept that we've put together, and also tell you about our toolbox. So you have some information there about what you can expect. From here, we take the feedback and things that we've heard during the meeting about the proposal and the concept, and then we do a more detailed design plan that refines this concept. We'll include the signage on that plan, and it's more zoomed in so you can see more precisely where those cushions would go between this house and that house and so forth. So then once we have that design put together, we will reach back out to our neighborhood contact and council member to schedule meeting number 2. And at that meeting, we will present some of the same information, but also some new information, because we recognize everyone can't be at all meetings, so we want to make sure we share that information all around. But we will also then present the more detailed plan, so you'll be able to see more specifically about the devices, the size, the locations. And then we talk more about the next steps, which is after that, after we have our design and we're all pleased with it and ready to move forward, NDOT has an online ballot that is used to demonstrate that there's neighborhood support for the traffic calming project before it gets installed. So what we do is we send out postcards similar to those that you may have gotten for this meeting if you live on the section of street that we're here talking about. Those online ballots will be open for a 6-week window, so we have a finite period of time when people can vote, and you can vote yes or no, and those ballot postcards go to the property owners along the affected street. And so if 66% of those that vote in the ballot are in favor of the project, then it moves forward. So this is an improvement if you were familiar and involved with the Haywood Heights traffic calming project and getting that that support demonstrated. This is different. We're doing an online ballot, and it has this finite window of time. So we know if the project's moving forward and can move forward into construction right after that, which the construction piece involves once the ballot closes and if the project's moving forward because it has the support that it needs, then NDOT orders the materials. That can take up to 4 months to get those materials in. NDOT doesn't store all this material. We have to order them project by project, and then it goes to the contractor to get installed, and that might be another 4-month time frame. So just want to give some expectations about the future of this getting installed, but we're moving forward. So our next steps will be the design phase to put that detailed design plan together, and then we'll be back with you all. I see another question, so let's see. The data proves that these measures will slow drivers down. Is there any data on whether they will lower the amount of vehicles on the road daily? Can we expect the cushions to encourage people to drive on Harding Place, for instance, instead of cutting through the neighborhood on Wallace? I don't have any specific data related to the Nashville data about that, but that may happen, but no, we don't have that data. Mr. Bull, you have a question? I see your hand raised. Oh, you may be muted. Let me see.
Here, you can hear me now.
I can.
I don't want to be part of the statistical package on this. Do y'all assign any additional weight for fatalities as opposed to people being injured by vehicles?
No, in the prioritization, we weigh pedestrian injuries and fatalities all together. It's just whether or not there's been that type of crash.
I guess that's a good thing. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so now I'm showing here the NDOT contact. Gil Thomas is the program manager with NDOT, and then my contact information, and I'm with Birch Transportation again, consultant working for NDOT to facilitate this program. So you can reach out to us if you have questions. This QR code takes you to the Traffic Calming website, TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov, and it's just got lots of information about this program. That's where our final plans are posted, so that when the ballot notices are sent to property owners, they can view the plans, because they may not have been to one of these meetings or know about it, but the plans are available to be viewed when you're voting for yes or no on a traffic calming project. Also, you can check whether or not a street has been applied for traffic calming. There's a GIS mapping there. It's interactive. You can look that up and see where traffic calming has been installed. Also, the program policies and manual is posted there, and results of the ballots are also posted on the website. So after the ballot window closes for your street, you'll be able to go to that website and see the results. The votes are kept anonymous and everything like that, but it gives information on whether what the percent of favorable votes was. So then you know if the project's moving forward or not. And then also NDOT's social media handles, if you're interested in following along, those are there for you. Do you have another question, Mr. Bull, or comment?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I saw your hand raised again. Councilmember, do you have anything else before we close out, or anybody else have any questions or comments?
I don't. Thank you guys so much for the presentation.
You're welcome. Again, this meeting was recorded, so if your neighbor wasn't here and you want to direct them to NDOT's website, you can find these posted there as well. And we appreciate you all joining the meeting, and thanks for coming. And we're excited to be working towards slower traffic on Wallace Road. Thank you. So I will close out the meeting.